There we go. Just gonna share this for a moment. Okay. So welcome, welcome. Just gonna wait a few more seconds. Let everyone into the room. Thank you all for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. Okay, I think we got a good little virtual crowd here. Well, as always, welcome. My name is Jonique Rose. I am the Manager of Inclusion and Diversity. I'm here at AFI within Fellow Affairs, and we have Adrian.
Hi, I'm Adrian, and I am the manager of the Lawrence Herbert Alumni Center.
So welcome, welcome. We have a wonderful panel today. Happy Black History Month. This panel is in partnership with Diverse Representation. So we do thank Diverse Representation for helping us organize this. Please visit their website at diverserepresentation.com. Again, that's diverserepresentation.com. And follow them on social media if you would like, at Diverse Representation on Instagram, and on Twitter, their handle is Diverse Rep. So I'm going to introduce our moderator for this afternoon, Rebecca Murga. Rebecca is a Chicago-born Latinx filmmaker who produces and directs content for clients such as ABC, CBS, HBO, Fox, AT&T, Riotback Television, and A&E networks. She is a member of the WGA, repped at Gersh and Zero Gravity Management, and has completed the AFI Directing Workshop for Women, the Disney ABC Directing Program, and the Ryan Murphy Television Directing Program. She is currently the director of AFI's DWW program, a program aimed at helping underrepresented directors, and is a fierce advocate of BIPOC filmmakers in the industry. Welcome, Rebecca. Turn it over to you.
I love it. Thank you, Jonique and Adrian. I just want to give a quick shout out to them. They spend a lot of time and energy putting these amazing panels together, and truly send them a thank you in the chat. Let them know sometimes it can feel thankless, but we truly appreciate everything that you do. So I could not be more thrilled to welcome some of the most amazing women here. And we're going to talk a little bit about them and their experience, but also it's going to be insightful in that we're going to talk a little bit about representation, about the differences of managers versus agents, do's and don'ts, and also, you know, how to get representation in an industry that is incredibly saturated. You know, we have entered one of the hardest career fields to get into, which is filmmaking. But it is the toy store and everyone wants to work in the toy store. So first, I want to introduce Jamice, who provides strategic counsel to writers, directors, producers, recording artists, Loyola Law School graduate, Yale University. Get it? Go ahead. I love it. Ava, who is with ICM Partners. It's a small, tiny little company. Kidding. It's a monster. It's a beast. ICM reps clients, writers and producers of some of the greatest television shows in history, like Handmaid's Tale, Better Call Saul, Modern Family, Grey's Anatomy. My writing partner used to write on Grey's Anatomy, so big shout out to that show. And The Ohio State, right? Graduate? There you go. I love it. And then DaVida Smith, who has a huge, rich background in talent management, content creation, Texas Southern University, get it, Texas, representing. And so I'm so excited to have all of you. I would love to kind of go around the horn and just tell us a little bit about how you got into this side of the industry, because it is, you know, it is a very specific side of the industry. It's working with you know, talent, but it's also the business side. And why I think that's important is because, you know, a lot of time film schools will concentrate on the art. The business is its own beast. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that. And Ava, we'll start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So great to see all these great faces on screen, given that we haven't been able to see each other in person for so long now. I will give you a quick little bio for me and a little bit of a bit about how I got my start. So I'm originally from South Euclid, Ohio. It is about 45 minutes outside of Cleveland. It's one of the burbs there. So I'd grown up just always loving film and television. I was a latchkey kid. We didn't have cable. I lived on like repeats of movies and things like that. And, the greatest thing I'm showing my age here. The Blockbuster ever had was this thing where you could pay a certain amount a month, and you could get as many, VHSs first and then DVDs as you wanted. So
Blockbuster, for you young kids, there used to be these things called tapes, and you'd have to go to stores and get them.
So available at your grocery store. I'm really aging myself here. So, so I was always fascinated when I would watch film and television, and we continue to see the same names in the credits. I would see Aaron Spelling. I would see Susan Harris. I would see Steven Spielberg. I would see these names, and I kind of wondered what it meant when something was produced by or written by or directed by. So at the time, this is truly pre-internet, like the only magazines you could find were, I'm sure, I don't know if anybody remembers something called Premiere Magazine or Movie Line Magazine. These were sort of magazines that talked a little bit about the business side of it. I say all of this to say to you is, even as a young person, I was interested in knowing more about the business side of it, about the business side of the creative. So I went to Ohio State, graduated. I thought I wanted to be a television producer. I thought that the only way that I could do that in Cleveland, Ohio, was to work at one of the local news stations. So I did that for a couple of years and realized if the business, especially at the time, was in Los Angeles. So I packed up my stuff, I moved out here. I didn't have a job. I didn't know anybody out here. I had my sister, but I didn't know anybody in the business. So I got an interview at I worked at a small agency. It doesn't exist anymore, for about 6 months. It's called Acme Talents and Literary. And one of the reason I mentioned this part of the story is because, and I'll go quickly, is you got to return everybody's call. So I've been trying to apply to one of the big agencies since I was in Cleveland, and I just couldn't get my an interview, just period. So at this agency, there was a manager that I kind of just took it upon myself just to be the person who talked to her and always returned her phone calls. So she asked me to lunch, and it was a woman named Deborah Miller, who had been an agent at William Morris for 15 years. And she's like, oh, I'll help you, and just, hold on a minute. A week later, I had an interview at William Morris and some of the other major agencies. So I worked at William Morris. I got the job there. I worked for a unscripted agent named Susie Unger for about 1.5 years, which was great because, again, I learned a part of the business that I don't really participate in right now. But guess what? I never forgot that knowledge. So I became a trainee at William Morris. I was promoted to agent in 2006. I was the first Black female motion picture lit agent promoted from trainee in the history of the company. I might still be. I'm not sure. I might still be. So I did that for several years, decided to pivot into television. And when I decided to do that, I'd taken a break from, I transitioned into management for a couple of years. It wasn't for me. There are amazing managers out there. That just isn't my strength. And when I decided to get back into the agency space, I knew that I wanted to get into TV lit. This was right at the beginning of the sort of the big TV boom with House of Cards and Netflix, and sort of the beginning of this, what we call the second golden age of TV. And I had friends at ICM. I always like to point this out. It was 2 Black women who helped recruit me into ICM, which I think is really important to share. And I joined the company in 2014. And my focus is primarily on television, but I certainly represent writers and directors who also make films and, sort of expand, go across the entire, breadth of the entertainment business. So that was a lot to say, but I was trying to get a few lessons in there.
I think it's great, and I want to unpack some of this stuff. We'll go to you next, DaVida, but specifically about why managers and agents are different and what are some of those skill sets. But DaVida, let's talk about you. How did you get into the industry? How did you know this was like your calling?
I feel like I'm the country version of Ava.
I love it.
We didn't have Blockbuster. It was like the random video village in the shack. And same thing on Friday nights, it was like, what can we rent? Because I'm tired of these 3 channels and what they have to offer. Just always loved film, always loved TV, always really loved books. But again, I'm from the country. I'm from Plaquemine, Louisiana, the city, not the parish. Very, very small town, and just had no idea that people did this for a living. And would tell my family when I grow up, I'm moving to LA, and they would be like, yeah, right. You're going to go to you're going to college, you're going to get a job, you're going to have this normal career. Luckily, that did not happen for me. I did go their route. I went to college, went to school, got a job at Purdue because apparently Indiana was going to be the gateway to LA. And while I was there working one night, an article came out in Vibe magazine, and it was a profile on Charles King, who we all know now as Mega Charles King. But at the time, he was just making his name as an agent. He had signed Missy Elliott, signed Tyler Perry, all this great stuff was happening. And he told his story. And the thing I took away from it, ironically, was that in order to get to LA, I should go to law school. So I went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law, studied entertainment law, and moved to LA because in my mind, if I got to LA with this law degree, of course, everybody would want to hire me. Being a little naive, not realizing that people had gone to like Harvard and Yale and real schools. And so I get here and I like call William Morris, like, I want to be a trainee. And they were like, okay, calm down. It didn't work out. But luckily somebody, a friend of mine, introduced me to a girl who had gone to my school, Southern University, an alumni of my college. And she introduced me to her boss, who at the time was an A-list talent manager and one of the very few managers who had Black talent that was at an A-list level. Fortunately, he saw something in me. He gave me a chance, and on his desk, I literally learned everything. Of course, there were the assistant duties, but there was also, I got to read scripts. I got to see how a project was made. I got to see how people come after A-list talent. And the most inspiring thing was I got to see how he worked with his clients when they had an idea and they wanted to produce it. And that's where I like took off. I want to be a manager and a producer, and I have to learn everything. So over the course of a few years, I worked there. I transitioned to Brillstein Entertainment with the help of an ICM woman. Tony Howard was a very big champion of mine, and she helped introduce me to other people. After Brillstein, I went on and I worked at Handprint with Benny Medina, which had been a dream come true. And when Handprint dissolved, I went back home to Louisiana, where the production industry was booming. I got to work on all types of different sets, do all these different things, but I missed the interaction with talent. And so I came back to LA and worked at a company until they dissolved. And when they did, I was just in a position where it was like, okay, do you go and try to be an assistant somewhere else or a junior manager, or should I just try it on my own? It was 2018. There were so many stories of women, really standing up for themselves in the face of Me Too issues and just really betting on themselves. And I felt like it was the time for me to bet on me. And I did. And luckily, that's been going well. I started my company in 2018. And I represent mostly actors, but a lot of talent that are multi-hyphenate, and a few writers. Hey, Ava. A few writers, and just basically trying to establish myself in the industry as a manager and a representative of all types of talent, regardless if they are women, men, Black, white, whatever, just really trying to establish a place for the underdogs. And I'm very, very, very grateful to be here today. Thank you to Diverse Reps and AFI, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to learn today.
I love it. And there's so many things I want to unpack there too, which is like, what do you look for in talent? It sounds like the road was very easy for you wonderful women as you came into an industry. But kidding. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Jamice, let's do this. Let's talk a little bit about how you got into the industry and what you're doing now.
All right. So it's great to be here. Thank you, Diverse Representation and AFI and the lovely women who spoke before me. I feel so inspired. So my path to becoming an entertainment lawyer really started, I'm from LA and I grew up around Tinseltown. I grew up in Leimert Park, so I wasn't in Hollywood, but, quickly could go to the Laugh Factory or go see, a major show at one of the theaters down here. concerts at the Forum. So I always felt involved. My dad is a preacher and he sings. And so he would have me sing for him before he preached on Sunday. So I grew up singing and I grew up dancing and doing theater. So, you know, my first place of comfort was on stage. And, you know, when I went to undergrad, you know, I sang a cappella and I danced in the dance company and started a theater company for Black theater because there wasn't one at Yale Repertory Theater, you know, produced primarily white content at the time. And so a friend of mine who's now an actress, successful actress out here in Hollywood, and I said, well, you know, I guess we have to just make this and put it out. So I think you know, part of me always, you know, identified with, you know, being an artist, but I also loved producing when you know, the theater company was around. And when I was an undergrad, and I saw that business side of me that I liked just as much as being creative. So when it was time to graduate from undergrad, you know, I knew that I wasn't going to go and be a consultant or, you know, go into finance, like the traditional routes they got to funnel you into after college. And I had worked summer before I graduated from college at Warner Brothers in domestic TV distribution, and it was in legal. And it was the first time that I really saw a long form contract. At the time, they were like on paper, like, you know, legal size paper contracts. And I worked in a department that sold one of the shows that were in syndication. So Ellen, you know, Flipping Single, Judge Mathis, Friends, there were a whole host of shows. And I saw how the money flowed from, you know, 100 episodes of a show. It's owned by a company. And there's a sales team that goes out and figures out where to put these shows so that they continue to generate money for the company. And I thought, wow, you know, this is an area that is completely new to me. I have no idea what's going on, but I like it. And the fact that this piece of paper houses all information that a person needs to know about the show just fascinated me. So
it's like a secret document.
A secret document, yeah. So my roommate at the time in undergrad was applying to law school. And so I thought, you know, well, then I guess I'm going to apply to law school too. That was how I made the decision. But I think something was sparked because I worked at Warner Brothers. So I applied to law school. I got into law school, but, you know, I didn't want to go straight from undergrad into law school. I needed a break and I wanted to work. You know, I wanted to come back to LA. I wanted to come home. I was cold in Connecticut for 4 years. Could not wait to get back to the sunshine. And so, I worked at ICM for a comedy agent, and his assistant was on maternity leave, and so I got the chance to, you know, be on a desk and feel what that was like on the talent side. And when that woman came back, I got a job working at CAA in business affairs for a television executive. So he, you know, that boss and I are great friends today. You know, he's retired. And I told him when I was interviewing with him, and he went to Dartmouth. So I think the Ivy League relationship, like, he really took a liking to me, and I think that made him feel very comfortable with me. So I felt comfortable just saying to them, you know, I applied to law school, I deferred 4 years. I'm not going to sit on your desk for 2 or 3 years, but I do want to know if I should go ahead and do this for 3 years, you know, if this is really the behind the scenes position that I want to be in entertainment. And so I became his apprentice, you know, for a year. Every contract he did, you know, I helped him with it and heard him on the phone, heard him negotiate. And once again, these magical documents, you know, had everything that an employer and talent needs to know about their relationship. And it continues in perpetuity, as you guys, you know, probably have seen from deals you've done or you've heard the word before. And so I went to Loyola for law school because it had the most entertainment classes than any other law school at the time in the country in 2007. And my jobs were at the DGA one summer. And so I learned about the Directors Guild and unions and why they're so important to talent. And when law school was over, it was the recession. So there were no legal jobs, but I knew that I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. Like that, there was an unwavering feeling that I had that I was going to get to this place. And I just didn't know how it was going to work, but I knew was going to happen. So I worked for a couple of law firms and, never really, found my footing, but I was grateful for the chance to have a paycheck during a recession. And then, after the mid-sized firm that I was working for closed due to, just recession issues, I had a little bit of a book of business. So I had some music clients that were in New York that I went to undergrad with, some folks in LA that were doing things, and I could bill at very low rates because I didn't know anything. So I sort of had this book of business that I was starting to generate, and I liked how that felt. I really liked that I was sort of in a relationship with the creative, but that I wasn't responsible for the creative, that I could guide the creative behind the scenes. So, just like DaVida, I thought, okay, I'll sink or swim. What's the worst that can happen? So I started a practice, and within a couple of months, a Black woman, Bonnie Berry Lamont, who's a 35-year, veteran in entertainment business, I met with her and I told her what I was doing, and she was like, "Oh, I have an entertainment law group. So why don't you just come over to my group, because you need to be in the marketplace saying that someone's training you, someone's behind you, and you can use my name." And when someone says that you can use their name, like, that is trust, and that is an ultimate gift of mentorship and sponsorship by her. So I worked with her for a little over 5 years, and I built a practice with her, and I helped her with her clients. She's at the top of her game. So very quickly, I got to negotiate deals and draft deals that I wouldn't have seen just by virtue of being a couple years at a law school. So it was a crash course in being the best, because she is the best. And so the opportunity arose at Pryor Cashman, my current firm. It's a mid-sized firm. We have offices in New York, Miami, and LA. And it's a corporate and talent entertainment. And my professor from law school was a partner here. And he called me like, hey, you want to move? And I talked to Bonnie, and she said, spread your wings. Like, this is why I was doing this, so that you would be able to be all that you can be. I'll always be here. So if you hate it, come back. But you'll probably end up liking, the expansion. So I came here in 2016, and I've been promoted to counsel. So, partner is next up for me. And I represent both corporate clients and talent clients. So my clients are Facebook, they're Netflix, they're individual writers and producers and actors. I represent production companies, ad agencies, tech startups, AR, VR content. So I really span the whole gamut, and I, do music as well. So I consider myself able to hear what a client is thinking about and what they're trying to do. And I can guide them through paperwork along the way, which, as you come along in the business, and I know DaVida and Ava can speak to this too, is like, rights and your ownership is, becomes paramount as you continue on. And so one of the things that I like to do is just explain the business to my clients when they're starting out. Like, here's why it's important to spend money on a collaboration agreement, on copyright registrations, on attachment agreements, shopping agreements. Like, it's not just, oh yeah, we're creative and we're hanging out together. Like, when there's a buyer at the table who wants to do a deal with you, they're going to ask you, trade of title, please. And you can't be in the room saying, I don't know what that is. So I think the business is a lot more transparent than it used to be. And on the legal side, I feel as though, these magical documents, like I can really, help clients understand why they're important, and be a helper with the managers and the agents of my clients. I get the deal, negotiate them, and, let everybody else do their job.
Well, can I just say, I think it's actually one of the most creative, because I've seen some creative contracts being made and some creative deals happening. So, so thank you for that. And it's actually a great pivot to, because I want to talk a little bit about some of these contracts. A lot of people listening right now either don't have representation, or they have representation and they're kind of fairly new in the industry. So I'd love to talk a little bit about, what do you need, right? The hardest part, and we're in a time right now of a pandemic where up and coming writers and directors probably aren't having as many opportunities as they would have had pre-pandemic. And so as they try to get representation, do you need a lawyer? Do you need a manager? Do you need an agent? what's the difference when you're kind of starting out in your career and then mid-career? Because also with, the Writers Guild and that strike, there was a really kind of illumination of what do you need at this point. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that, specifically in the lens of up and coming writers and directors who are trying to get representation. And anyone can go ahead and take that.
Sorry, is your question like, what do you need starting out?
Yeah, what should you be looking for starting out? Manager, an agent, what are some of the differences and nuances?
I will say, I wish, I get asked this on every panel, and I wish I had like a really definitive black and white answer for you. Part of it is going to be up to the individual. If you are a writer with, 20 different ideas and none of them are finished, and you need some help sort of developing these ideas, sort of figuring out what makes sense in the marketplace to work on, a manager might be the right start for you, because many managers can be great at development and helping sort of streamline ideas and helping you figure out what should be on the back burner or what should be on the front burner. If you are if you're a writer with a couple different scripts, an agent might be the way to go for you, because if you're interested in getting staffed on a show, if you are interested in, development also, but, in order to get staffed on a show, you've got to have something to show for it. You've got to have some sort of writing sample. It could be a feature, it could be a pilot. It could be a year's worth of your blogs. It's got to be something. And so if you have multiple samples that you can point to, an agent might be the way to go, because I will often look for a couple of samples from someone. Again, it can be a script and a year's worth of blogs. It doesn't have to be 5 scripts, but I always just like to see, what they have in their arsenal. I'll say this to you right now. I truly believe it is never too early to have an attorney. Okay. I have an attorney. Okay. And I make deals for a living. Okay. I don't think it is easy to say, 5% of nothing is nothing. And having an attorney in place early, I just think is invaluable. I just wanted to say that.
And to that point, DaVida, what are some of the things that they should be looking for when they start asking for attorneys, right? Because when you don't know where to start, obviously trying to get someone to reference someone is great, but where do you start when you want to build that relationship, and how do you know it's a good fit? Because finding an attorney is also kind of like going on a date. You got to figure out, are they a good fit, and what are some of the questions that they should be asking?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because at the end of the day, managers and agents, we can help you develop these ideas. We can help you get in front of the right person, but I can't negotiate your deal legally or ethically. I just don't feel comfortable with that. And so at the same time, though, it's not like you can just call up a law firm and be like, hey, I'm a new writer director, I want to have a meeting, because that's not going to work either. I think the problem is there's no black and white answer to this. It worked for them this way, so you can go and do the same thing. It just doesn't work that way. The way I feel you go about getting an attorney is you have this project, you have this IP, you have this book, you have something that needs representation. You can't go to the attorney with the idea of, oh, I'm going to be a writer and I have this great idea. I'm going to do the next Billie Holiday story and I need to get the rights, so I need an attorney. No, you have to come in having had something. So suppose you are a student at AFI, you're a writer director, you want to tell this story, you've written this script, you've got this great project, and now you're at the point where you're about to go out and try to get distribution. At that point, I would suggest researching what attorneys are out there that have done similar type deals. Now, I'm a manager, so for me, what would happen is this writer-director type wants to have representation. They don't have anyone on their team. If they come to me, what I'm looking for is the thing you say you do. So if you say you're a writer, wow me in this introduction letter. Like, something about this letter needs to grab my attention. And if you're a director, something visually needs to leap from your project to get my attention. And I think it's the same way with an attorney, because like Ava said, 5% of nothing is nothing. But that lawyer who is a visionary is going to look at that small sample that you submit. It can be an AFI film. It could be your thesis statement for AFI, but they can look at that and see like, whoa, this person has potential, or this is the type of filmmaker that the marketplace is going to be looking for in 3 years. So I'm willing to invest in this person who's going to bring me no money for a while, because I know they've got the thing that'll lead to that. So I guess to answer your question in a nutshell, how do you go out and find that person? It's this: you come to these panels, you hear who's talking, you follow diverse reps, you see who did what deal, you find your favorite filmmakers, who are they rep by, and at what point did they get with that representation. And while you can't go step by step and do the exact same thing they did, it can give you a vision of what needs to be done.
That's great. Jamice, any thoughts on this?
Sure. Well, you're both absolutely right. I think there's no time that's best to, have a lawyer. I think the way that most lawyers work is that, we don't do what agents do. So we don't procure employment. That's the word. We don't procure employment for clients. So that means I can't sell a project to a buyer. That's what agents do. I can help in the process. And the reason is because the California Labor Code prevents lawyers from procuring employment for their clients. So it is, I'm always working in connection with agents and managers. And I'm very clear on my role. Like, I don't go to pitch meetings, I don't show up in the buyer spaces, because my job is to advise from a legal perspective from the beginning. So what that may look like is, let's say you've written a script. I may ask if you've registered with the WGA or the Copyright Office. If you've never heard of those things, I would explain that to you, and walk you through the registration process, so that you could learn how to do that yourself for your next projects. I also, sometimes I get phone calls from people who are developing projects with other people. And so there's, murky issues of who owns what and who's written what. And, so who's in charge of this? Can one person take it out to pitch without the other person? There's all sorts of issues that can arise when you start collaborating with people. So, I draft a lot of collaboration agreements, a lot of shopping agreements for producers that might have come across a project that they think is really, really cool. They haven't written it, they don't own it, but they know where buyers are and what interest they can maybe get for that script or that project in whatever stage it's in. Lookbook, episodes are written, story Bible, the whole gamut. So I draft a lot of those for my producer clients that are, always on the hunt for the next interesting thing. And so they'll enter into a term deal with a creative that gives them certain exclusive rights to shop a project. I mean, they'll attach themselves as a producer. So in the event there's a buyer who wants to buy the project, then there are some terms that are already pre-negotiated that can go into that negotiation with the buyer. Another way I'm helpful is with submission releases. Oftentimes you can't submit to agencies unsolicited if you're a talent. So, I'll play that role for an individual I'm saying that, like, I'm not going to find you an agent, but if you say like, hey, I have, gone to a bunch of events and I came across Ava and she's like, hey, send me your stuff, but she needs it to come in the door, represented, then I can, facilitate and help that process. Or if you
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry. Please continue.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I was going to say, that's actually a great point. At this point, I've been doing this for a long time. Unfortunately, I'm not able to take unsolicited submissions, knowing that I may be missing out on somebody great, but I will absolutely take a submission from an attorney in a minute.
That's great to know. That's great to know, because
sorry.
Yeah. And so, a lot of this work, I mean, talent firms work on a percentage basis. Firms like mine do both percentage and hourly. So, the billing structure is something that you'll have to work out with your individual lawyer, because sometimes development work is on an hourly basis because there's nothing to commission, right? Like you're providing a legal service in the hope that there are deals down the line. And so it's, a few hours of work here and there along the way as you're building your IP. So, it's like, it's oftentimes what may prevent someone from hiring a lawyer is cost, especially in the development stage. So I would say, it's being represented isn't free. So I don't think I get a lot of calls like, well, tell me how I can work with you on a commission basis. But maybe they're at the development stage. And so, there's just certain fee structures that don't work depending on where you are along the line with your IP. So that's something to keep in mind too, is, you always want to be in a position to be able to pay for something. I'm not saying you have to have like $100,000 in the bank, but, know that it does cost to be in the business, and to understand the business, and you're getting the benefit of having representation that's been doing this for many, many, many years. So,
and I love that you brought up compensation, because that's something that is often, what is proper compensation? How do you approach that conversation? Is it at that first meeting with an attorney of like?
Yeah, at the first meeting. I mean, there's some standards that we follow. Agents usually commission at 10%, managers usually 15 or 20. Sometimes I've seen 10, but usually it's a bit higher than agents. And then lawyers commission at 5% or work on an hourly basis depending on the work. So you're not going to find a whole lot of nuance in the fee structures. So
if a lawyer is like 50%, you got to be wary.
You should. You absolutely should be, yes, because that means that they're probably trying to take ownership in your content, which is something that we can't do either. Managers have tons of flexibility. They can produce alongside their clients, in exchange for producing fees, etc. But lawyers that because we're licensed by the state of California, and we have tons of rules and regulations that prevent us from doing things that we may want to creatively. If a lawyer starts, talking about, I want to, part own your project, or let's write together, it's, probably a murkier relationship than you want to be in.
So let's talk about, I did fail to mention, if you are a participant and listening to this webinar, there's a Q&A function at the bottom. If you have a question, go ahead and pop it in the chat, and we will make sure that question gets asked. But I'd love to talk about that first meeting. I've heard so many stories about, like, what does signing look like, right? What does that first meeting, when you are meeting talent that you are interested in, what does it look like after? Is there an official signing that takes place? Because I've seen, managers sit and talk to a client, and I've had directors come back and say, hey, I've sat there for 3 hours and they just wanted to keep hearing more. And so it's very like, what does that first meeting look like? Just to kind of peel back some of the cloudiness and murkiness in there.
I'll go with this one because I can sometimes be very chatty. And that doesn't always mean that we're going to be a fit, but I'm trying to figure it out. And the first meeting for me will look like, I've read something, I've seen something that you've done. If you're talent, I've seen your work. Whatever it is you do, I've seen your work. I want to know more. I want to know who this person is, and because I am a manager and it's going to be a very close relationship, and I'm going to be, putting a lot of my time into this. I'm a one-woman show. I don't have a company like behind me, so I have to make sure we're a good fit. I want to know who you are, and I want to know the question that I am looking for. The answer that I'm looking for is, why are you doing this? Because if you're a person who is here to try to be famous or to get seen or to, floss, I'm not the one for you. It's not going to work. I'm here to build talent. I'm here to build relationships. I'm here to get good things in the marketplace. I'm here to get good stories told. I'm here to get the type of things I want to see that I don't see seen. And so I can figure that out in a conversation. And so that first conversation for me is that. Now, if it's somebody I'm hot over, I'm passionate about them, I want them, they'll know leaving that meeting. Sadly, if you leave and you don't quite know where you stand, that's probably a sign it's not going to go further, because I don't know where you stand. I like you, I like your work, but I don't quite know how it fits, and I don't know how to say that right then. And in general, I never want to like break anyone's spirit, because just because you're not a fit for me doesn't mean you're not talented. I also always try to leave the door open. Like, how can, like, if this is somebody whose work I really love, but I know they're not a fit for me, perhaps you have something coming up that could be right for one of my talent. Like, can we connect in that way? So for me, that first meeting is mostly about getting to know them, but also to let them get to know me, because I'm a little different. I'm not like everybody else, and that might not work for the talent. So I just want them to have the opportunity to know me. I want them to be heard. Everybody always talks about how it's so hard to get heard in this town. So I've given you that space and that time. And that's what that first meeting is.
Yeah.
Ava.
My first meetings are usually on the phone. Very rarely do folks say, let's have lunch to talk about you being my lawyer. I mean, every now and again, but usually I just get a cold call. Like, someone knows Pryor Cashman, my law firm. Someone knows, Bonnie, and Bonnie's referred them to me. A lot of my clients refer their friends to me, so it comes in the door that way. And then I do panels like this, so I get calls from people that are like, oh, I heard you speak on so and so, and I think I need a lawyer. Can you tell me if I do need a lawyer? So I usually, will take a half hour or an hour and just sort of talk to the person that's on the other end about, where they are, what they're doing, what they hope to accomplish, and then see if there's a place for me in there at that stage. So it kind of is more informational. For me, I don't charge a consulting rate for the first call, and some lawyers do. But usually by the end of the call, it's very clear if we're going to start working together. Like, I usually don't have like 2 and 3 phone calls with someone. It's usually like, okay, great. So send me your engagement letter and let's get started. Or I say, maybe you need an agent, or maybe you need a manager first, just like we were talking about earlier. But it's very conversational and very light and easy.
Ava.
I will just add, I'll just sort of agree with some other points that you guys just brought up, which is, you've got to get to know me as much as I've got to get to know you. I have a very specific sensibility. A lot of people like it. Some people don't. And we need to know if we're a fit for each other. I'm also, quite frankly, checking to see how you are in a room, so that when I call producers and other clients and executives and folks like that, I'll have a sense of like what you're going to be like in the room. And listen, and I think it's important I will often say to folks, let's keep talking. We spoke for 2 hours. I'm not ready to pull the trigger. By the way, you might not be ready to pull the trigger with me. And again, I want to reiterate again, DaVida, I think you said this, just because you are ultimately we are not the right fit, I am rooting for you out there. And I will see you, my joke is like, I'll see you out there on these streets. There's a lot of ways for us to work together without being client and an agent. You may have something that I think I may love your script. Ultimately, I don't think we're a good fit as a long-term match, but I do want to share it with one of my director clients. So if I am passing on you, you should not take it personally. I'm one person, okay? Like, I don't know everything, and just, it's not a reflection on your talent. That's what I really want to reiterate.
It's because it's hard. It's hard to take that personally when you're out there and you're hungry and you're trying to get representation. But it's the same as, I guess, dating. You don't want to be the desperate date who's constantly calling. Speaking of which,
there is nothing wrong with follow-up. Sorry, I just wanted to say that too. Okay, there is nothing wrong with follow-up. All of us on this call are crazy busy. Sometimes it takes that second or third email for me to be like, oh God, I gotta get, I did love that script. Like, I should really definitely connect with that person again. There's nothing wrong with follow-up. I don't see that as desperate. I will tell you if it's not gonna work out. For me personally, it helps. I'd like to have follow-up. Quite frankly, I think it says something about you if you are following up.
I think that's actually great, because I'd love to get into like what does a good relationship look like with an agent as far as communication? What does that look like with a manager, with a lawyer? And to that point, at what point is too much? There's following up, and then there's beyond that border. So Yeah, let's talk about that. What is a good, once I have you as a rep, what does a good relationship look like? How often are we talking?
Again, sorry, I don't mean to jump in. Someone else want to go first?
Go ahead.
There's no perfect formula, but we should be talking on a fairly, or communicating over email on a fairly regular basis. If you're not talking to your agent, there needs to be a reason why. And some people like, oh, I'm still in school or whatever, or I'm taking a break while I focus on family or something like that. But you need to be in touch with your representative. And if you're not in touch with your representative on a regular basis, and that means this is what I did this week, this is what I'm working on, so that I can tell you what I'm working on and what I've been doing, is follow-up is not consistently asking me every week what's going on with this project. Like, but if you are not having a regular dialogue of some kind with your representative, maybe you're not with the right representative. That's what I will say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right. I think over time I end up becoming friends with my clients, right? Because we do talk so regularly, and it's a super personal relationship. It's fiduciary sometimes, depending on what I'm working on. I think sometimes it depends on the client too. Some clients don't want to be bothered. They talk to their agents and their managers. The material terms have been negotiated. I get the paperwork. They just want to know that I got the paperwork and that I'm looking at it. And then to let them know if there are any issues, and they'll follow up and just say, hey, checking on the long form. Like I get involved, at the end of, a buyer coming in and saying, yay, I want this. So, it really just depends. My clients sort of don't need to check in with me every day or every week. I have one client that wants that. Like, he wants every Friday for me to update him on what's going on with this project, because he just has so many right now. And so he doesn't want to get lost in the deals that his agent has closed. So there's some clients that I think like that, like to know that they're protected. But I think, I think that the trust gets built, and I think every client decides, with their lawyer, how much they want to call. I mean, calls are billable time. So I feel like a lot of clients are like, if I don't have anything to say, I'm not going to call you because you're going to be, like, I don't want to get a bill. Like, this is, unless we're having lunch, calling to talk about a deal, like, it gets expensive. So I think my clients too are like, we know you're going to handle it, and you'll let us know if you need me to call. So that's usually what happens on my end.
I love it. And then DaVida, because the manager relationship is very different. Some are very intimate and close conversations, which are daily, and some not so much. So what is par? What have you seen? Or what works for you?
Yeah, and with the writers and directors, I've seen it very much depends on that person. For instance, I have one girl, and when she's gotten a new idea, she'll of course call me and we talk about it, and then she sets off on her path. She doesn't want to be bothered. So I'll like text her like, hey, you okay? And she might thumbs up it, or she might not say anything. That's how I know she's in her sweet spot. If she responds, something's not going right and she's having some sort of a block. And then I have to navigate, like, do I want to try to step in that water, or do I want to let her wait it out? Another writer that I work with, she is very, very, very communicative. She wants to, like, I changed a comma's position in the log line. Do you think it's gonna matter? It's like, girl, come on, calm down. It's not like that. But I know her now, so I know that's just her nerves, and I want to be there to kind of ease it out. So it just depends on the person. But if I haven't heard from you in a couple weeks, I'm nervous, because like what's going on? It feels like a relationship. It's some people you're gonna want to see every day, and some people you can see once a week, and it's just fine. So it's finding that proper navigation. Now that's when you are my client. Now if you're trying to become a client, or we're trying to get to know each other, I think that there's a very fine line between follow up, follow through, and stalker. And I'm a lot scared of the stalkers. So just make sure that you're being respectful of people's time. It's Saturday at 6:00. Is it really that pressing that you had to call my cell phone, or could it have been an email? So just using a little discretion with where you are, recognizing who you are to this person. At this point, it's an interview. We don't know each other yet. And if you're a little too persistent, that might be taken the wrong way. But at the same time, it's that fine line, because if you're not persistent and you don't follow up, you could get lost in the shuffle.
Mhm.
So it's one of those, here's my answer. I hope you can figure it out.
No, it's amazing advice, and it's different. What's great is you bring different perspectives in it. And
One thing
sometimes,
I have to add-
go ahead.
one thing I have to add is that I come in at the dispute stage also. So sometimes, like, it's my job to undo what has happened, or if there's a problem, then I'm called to resolve it. So, I usually come in, unfortunately, when things have gone wrong.
And that's when it's great to have a wonderful attorney.
Oh yeah.
Um,
If you figure it along the way, that it shouldn't be that expensive. It should be able to, be resolved. It's usually when like a lot has happened with no lawyer on either side, and then everyone hates each other, and then it gets, the untangling of that takes a lot of time and gets expensive, because now you're trying to figure out rights and ownership, and settling, paying people out and buying out rights, and like Ava was saying, just get a lawyer. Just
I would love to ask this question for people who actually have representation, because sometimes I'd love to say that when you first get your representatives that it's a fit and you're going to live happily ever after. But oftentimes you're trying a couple before you find that right one. And so I get this question a lot, and I'm curious, what's the appropriate way if it's not working out to part ways with someone who might be representing you, and it's just not a fit.
Pick up the phone. I have to say, listen, I've been doing this for over 15 years. I've certainly been fired by a client or told like it's not working out, it's not a right fit. I just think it's very meaningful to pick up the phone and make the call. I think if I were parting ways with a client, I certainly wouldn't send them an email.
I agree. I was sent an email by a client that I represented for many, many years, a baby writer. And, he got his first staff writer deal, and he was super excited. And that's usually when the ground gets a little murky. Talent thinks that they now need to go on and like get Denzel Washington's agent, so we sort of had, I felt a little bit of that in this particular client. And then I got an email that was like very long and winded, and was tried to say things that didn't happen, and I think I would have benefited from just having a call and saying, it's been great, thank you, I'm gonna go on to X. Like I ended up knowing the other lawyer too, so it even made it even weirder. So I agree, just we're people, and it's okay to move on. It's just you want to act right, because it's a small community, we all know each other, and so you don't want to be that client that doesn't know how to communicate properly with their rep or end relationships and set boundaries.
Yeah, I agree with both those statements. And I'd also just like to add, at the end of the day, you want to make sure you're being reciprocal. You're here, we're both working toward the same goal. And when it does reach that point where it's not going any further, just, there's ways we could work together in the future. If you're a writer or a director, you're going to always have projects. But if you treated me poorly, I'm going to remember that when you're coming to get my talent who you think can make your project good. So, and by the same way, I have to treat you properly, because one day I might need you. So as third grade as it sounds, it's the golden rule. Just treat people how you want to be treated.
I love that. That's all wonderful advice. We do have a question. B. Francis Clark. Jonique, I don't know if you're out there, if you can bring them online so they can ask that question in person, virtual person.
Yeah, hold on.
And if you have, we are at the Q&A portion. If you have questions, this is the time to ask them, my friends. Go ahead and pop them in the Q&A section, and we can bring you up to ask them. B. Francis Clark, there you are. I think you're muted, my friend. If you want to go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself and then ask your question.
Hi there. My name is Bernard. I had no intention of being on camera today whatsoever. I'm borderline in pajamas.
I love it. It's a virtual world.
Yeah.
It is a virtual world, but first of all, thank you very much for doing the panel. It's been very informative, and I really, really appreciate it. My question is, where do you guys go to proactively find talent? There's on the writer's side, there's always what we're talking about right now, making the phone calls, making the outreach, and that is sometimes successful and oftentimes not. But I'm just sort of curious, where do you guys go to proactively find people if there is such a place? And I specifically asked, do you use the blacklist? Are there other platforms that you typically go to find writers, or is it still the same who you know and making sort of outreach? Does that make sense at all?
Excellent question.
Okay, thanks so much.
I'll hop in real quick. As a manager, as a non-traditional literary manager, meaning that's not, what I built my company on, but I love the storytelling process. I'm constantly reading. I'm outside of the box. I'm always on Twitter, and there's all these different Black writer groups or this type of writer groups or specific to gender or ethnicity writer group rooms or chats. And I'm always following them. And when people have great tweets, I want to read more. So then I'll go to their website, and then there's samples. So that's a way that I look for things. Before all of this happened, I was a big fan of festivals. Love festivals because it makes me feel like a film geek and getting to go out and meet people that way. Now I also read a lot of newsletters, also put together by these groups that are writers. Sometimes I don't have the time to commit to an entire script, but I could read an article. I read that, while I'm on the treadmill. Well, not the treadmill, but while I'm supposed to be on the treadmill. I think for me, it's the outside of the box ways. Like, who is this unsung talent? I want to find that person that no one else knows about yet, so I can find that in a different way.
Okay.
And yes, I do read the blacklist.
Okay.
Ava?
I would agree with everything that DaVida said. I haven't used the blacklist in a little while because, and I know that what Franklin's done has been amazing, because what he's done is sort of pivoted it into this sort of this end of the year thing, and then also really a database of great scripts. I haven't had the time to really dig into it as deeply as I would like. I'll be really honest. Mm-hmm. And I think that most recently, last couple of years, the blacklist has been scripts that are often, not always, sometimes in development, because it's really the best liked script. And often these scripts tend to be scripts that are in development or have attachments or set up and financed. So I think the blacklist is great. I think it's a great tool. I personally haven't been able to dig into it as much as I would like. I think what I think is important to note in 2021 is that you can grab someone's attention via social media. I found I have a client who I just started following on Twitter. I read his material. The material is great. He's great in the room. We're selling projects, but I'll admit it was his funny tweets that got my attention.
Okay. So
I'm not saying that every creative artist has to also learn how to tweet too, but I do want to be honest that sometimes I will, what will come to my attention is social media, blogs. Sometimes people are reporters or they're writing for, for other mediums, and it comes to my attention that way too, podcasts, stuff like that.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
I don't want to, you said something important, is it still who you know? And while I do pride myself in thinking outside of the box and, trying different means, if someone I respect sends me something, I'm going to stop. I'm going to read that. So the who you know part is definitely still there. And, as inclusive and out of the box as we attempt to be, that's still a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
I did want to pivot a little to, we speak a lot about writers and representation as writers, directors, producers. One of the things I found is when you look at buyers, when you look at agents and managers, the numbers, representation of Black or people of color who are in those spaces, there's not a lot of them. And so I'd love to kind of hear your point of view, because you all spoke to, when you kind of came up, there was someone advocating for you or someone kind of guiding you into these spaces. But you also hear stories about, NPR came out with a story about, agents or young up and coming agents who are in people of color who are in these white spaces, not feeling welcome in some cases. And so I'd love to talk a little bit about, because I know you are each kind of doing it on your own terms, whether it's mentoring other Black artists, making sure that you're representing a Black artist in your work. I'd love to talk a little bit about what you're doing and kind of how do you feel the industry is changing or not?
Rebecca, I'm so sorry. What's the question?
Well, what I like to do, Ava, I like to ask really complicated questions.
No,
Just
no, no.
kidding.
So I want to answer your question.
Sure.
How's it change in terms of?
Yeah, have you seen it change, or have you seen the conversation change so that numbers are actually rising? And also, like, what are you doing to whether it's helping mentor or really finding artists who are diverse, to putting them on your slate? So either one of those.
So a couple things. I'm really focused in terms of mentorship in helping young folks who want to be behind the scenes in the business, as I truly believe that there can't be real change in terms of what's on screen until we have people of color who can greenlight and hire folks. That's, to me, is just as important as what's on the screen. So I am always here I'm particularly interested in helping folks who want to be studio executives or network executives or want to be agents. I feel like, an agent is, it's a path that, like, you really got to love it or it's not going to be for you. But I got really excited when, I'm excited about, like, what ICM is doing, because part of the, like, sort of changing this dynamic of, it used to be you would come to these agencies, you wouldn't be making a lot of money, and just ultimately you ended up getting sort of like weeded out. And it was like, I only was able to work as an agent those first couple of years because my dad had passed away and left me a few bucks. Like, and trust me, it wasn't a lot, but it was something that I could pull from. I certainly couldn't have survived. And you can't work a second job where you're working, 60 hours a week. I guess you can, but I wasn't. And so we've done a lot of, one, making sure that the pool of assistants that we look for comes from a lot of different parts of the country, different financial backgrounds, HBCUs. It's really important. All of our assistants can't come from Los Angeles, California. I certainly wouldn't, I couldn't get a job as an assistant living in Cleveland, Ohio. So that's something that was really important to me. Making sure that people have, a livable wage, making sure that when folks come into the agency that they see that there's a path forward for them. So I think that has definitely changed since I moved out here and took home $173 every 2 weeks. So,
wow.
And that was just like, if you don't like it, figure, tough beans. Like, that was the tough beans. I don't know, I was going to swear, but I didn't want to. But that was just the way that it was, which is insane to me now. Insane.
Yeah, you bring up a great point of a real economic divide.
The other thing I will say, there was this change in mentality, I think, from, some folks who I was coming up with was like, that's what I had to do. And and you have to deal with it too. And after, I think maybe at first I sort of thought that way, but then I was like, wait a minute, this is crazy. We're not going to see real change unless we really make changes structurally in terms of in order for these young folks to survive and be able to work in these jobs. Because I want to see more Black agents out there. There's not enough of us.
Truth.
One thing for me, as far as the people I represent, whenever I've worked, wherever I worked, one thing that would always annoy me, not so much with the leadership, but with my coworkers, when Black people, specifically Black women, would come in seeking representation, they'd always be like, yeah, she's cool, but we already got two. And I'm like, so we all the same? So now I have probably way too many Black people, Black women clients, because I'm rooting for them and I want them to win. So at my company, if you look at my roster, the diversity is skewed towards people that look like me because it is what it is. That said, I feel like the industry has changed a lot. You know, there has been a lot of progress, but the thing that I would encourage us to remember is not the fact that you had to work so hard. I worked so hard to get here, so now I want you to have to go through what I went through. No, that's not true. But I do want you to have that same work ethic that I did. And I think sometimes the newer generation, now I'm aging myself, like the young folks today, I just wish, you know, while I am so proud of them and they stand up for themselves and they're not going to take that, and they do demand, you know, higher pay and they demand better working conditions, just meet that with that same intensity on the work side. Like, just, you know, this is a tough business and it takes a whole lot. And again, I don't know if that's the right answer, that we should all just keep working harder, but at the same time, you know, it takes a lot to get a movie made. It takes a lot to have this idea as a writer or director and to write this script and to get other people behind you and to command a crew. So it's work, regardless of how much the industry changes. That part's never going to change. So I just encourage people to come into it with open eyes. This is going to take a lot more than some inclusivity directive or some diversity directive. You still have to work.
Mm-hmm. I would just add that, you know, anyone that's listening, if you don't subscribe to Variety or Hollywood Reporter or Billboard, you know, make it a point to do so, because representation, you'll see, like Ava was saying, you know, there are reps listed in the trades on a daily basis, but also you get to see what production companies are selling projects. And the makeup of that has changed dramatically, just because of Black Lives Matter, because of George Floyd, and suddenly, you know, the community is awake to the Black experience that we've been living in, you know, for centuries. But, you know, like we have not been gatekeepers in Hollywood. And so there are a lot of companies now, more than before, that are owning content more than they used to, like Hillman Grad and Cripswoman said, Charles King and Macro, that are on the financing side of things. Like, financing is really where the money is. I do a lot of financing deals on behalf of, you know, filmmakers and financiers, and, you know, that's the equity and control. And, you know, just by virtue of our history in this country, we haven't always been on the side of the economic growth and potential. But there are companies that are really doing that. Bassett Vance Productions is in a very lucrative deal with Viacom CBS. We've got a lot of overall deals with Black talent at, you know, the various mega motion picture companies. So, you know, there is a diversity of content that's being passed around, I think, in numbers that, you know, didn't exist like 10 years ago. But there's still so much more work to be done. But I think there has been progress and forward movement. And so, you know, I think it's happening. Like DaVida said, there's, you know, younger folks are like, they have platforms everywhere. So there was ways to put out their content that didn't exist for the creators that are at the top now, like Regina King and Angela Bassett and Charles King, that are, you know, that have come up in an area where space was limited and you had to get the best thing out. Now you got folks just putting things out and really, you know, testing the waters. So, you know, I don't know what's good or bad, but it's a new space, and I think more room for diverse storytellers. And as far as mentorship goes, you know, it's a bit harder for me because, you know, I'm in the legal space, but there is, you know, I was mentored by Bonnie Berry Lamont, as you guys know. So whenever a law student calls me or a young lawyer calls me asking for help, like, I take as long as they want on the phone, you know, to give them advice, because that's what people did for me. And there's a young Black woman at my firm in the corporate department, and I kind of poached her, brought her over to Media Entertainment, because I could tell that she was a little unhappy. And so, you know, I know that there are so many Black lawyers that leave law firms because they don't feel comfortable. They don't feel like they have a voice. and they go in house or stop practicing altogether. So, you know, I make it a point to mentor where I can, especially young lawyers, because there's so few Black partners in the space, and equity partners on top of that. So, you know, I'm doing my part there as much as I can, and, you know, hope to do more and, you know, be someone that can, you know, do that myself on the equity side and bring another lawyer up on the equity side too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We actually have a question on ageism, and I know it doesn't exist in Hollywood. Kidding. But what are your thoughts on, can you speak on ageism in Hollywood, in behind the scenes roles, whether it's in writers or directors or actors? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I will say, here's what I'll say, is there has been a commitment, a specific commitment in the last couple of years, in which ageism is being addressed, in that showrunners are like, I need somebody with some life experience, okay? Like, I don't need, like, I have enough like young folks, I'm gonna promote my writer's assistant or whatever, and, or, you know, but I need somebody who's actually had like a job or professional career, or it's just something, you know, is a parent or is like led a life outside of, you know, just going to school and being a writer. So they don't say that it's to address ageism specifically, but I have noticed this understanding that folks who are a little bit older have something to bring to the table in a real way.
That's great.
That's
great. And it's a challenge because you do have a lot of you know, people who come here right out of college, and they know this is what they want to do, and they don't necessarily have that life experience. Well, I want to thank you, incredible ladies, for being here, for dropping some wisdom on us, kind of giving us a little insight into managers, agents, and lawyers. We could spend weeks really talking about contracts and all that fun stuff, but I really appreciate your time. I do want to say thank you to Jonique and Adrian, who put this together, and want to give a shout out as well to, hang on one second. Jonique, are you there?
Yes.
It's diversity representation, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Shout out to Diverse Representation. Their website is diverserepresentation.com.
Excellent. Go support. They're actually a wonderful organization.
I use it myself all the time. I use it all the time.
So do I. And I, one of the things that they have, excuse my phone, there is a program that they're hosting on, it's like a Black executive pipeline. So, you know, stay on top of it, representation. Jaya Thomas, the CEO and founder, is an entertainment lawyer, and she's a really great friend of mine. We actually were baby lawyers in 2010 together, trying to figure out how to, you know, make it work.
She's lovely.
And
lovely.
she's an incredible woman, and this was something that she always talked about, you know, was why is no one that looks like me hiring me? And the response would always be, well, I don't know where to look. And so she's created this incredible database of representatives. That's the first piece of it. But now there's partnerships that she's created with other studios and networks and streamers to really promote Blackness in those spaces from the executive side. So, you know, really check out the website and, you know, support her and what she's doing.
Yes, please go check out the website, DWW, and I know the alum are going to try to do something with that organization, because they really, truly do so much for Black representation in this industry. So I'm going to turn it over to Jonique, who's going to have last words, and we will say goodbye.
Yes, thank you so much, Rebecca, for moderating this panel. Thank you, Ava, Jamice, and DaVida, for all the gems that you provided with us for us today. Really appreciate it. And I know those who were in attendance really valued what you did say. So like Jamice and Rebecca have said, definitely check out Diverse Representation. You can go to their social media. Once again, on Instagram, it's Diverse Representation, and on Twitter, it's Diverse Rep. And it is a database of entertainment and sports agents, lawyers, as well as as managers, publicists, and financial advisors. So they have a wide base of African-American representation and affiliates across the country. So it's definitely a great organization. So thank you so much for coming today. I hope you all learned something. Once again, this is recorded, so we will share it out with you all later this afternoon. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good afternoon.
Bye. Have a great day.
Thank you.